This is Season 3, Episode 7 of the Emberhart podcast. We are assisting the next generation of girls and women to lead with courage. So, sit tight and let us begin. The second mountain and the call to a relational life. Dear Amelia Emberhart, in the final sections of The Second Mountain, David Brooks turns from personal transformation toward the deeper questions of philosophy, faith, and community. These chapters are less about achievement and more about meaning. They invite us to consider what happens after we discover that success, autonomy, and self-fulfillment are not enough. They ask what kind of life is worth dedicating ourselves to, and what commitments can sustain us through suffering, uncertainty, and joy. The limits of reason and the wisdom of tradition. Modern culture often celebrates the individual thinker who challenges established beliefs and tears down old structures. Brooks cautions that such destruction is not without risk. Traditions, institutions, and inherited ways of life often contain wisdom accumulated across generations. We may not always understand the invisible webs of support they provide until they are gone. Human reason is a remarkable tool, but it is not sufficient to comprehend the full complexity of reality. There are dimensions of life that can only be understood through experience, participation, and relationship. Once we have glimpsed the highest forms of human experience, moments of beauty, sacrifice, transcendence, and love, it becomes difficult to remain satisfied with a purely material or self-focused existence. Brooks also reminds us that emotional knowledge is a form of wisdom. Knowing what to feel in a given situation is a skill that must be cultivated. To be properly moved by suffering, properly outraged by injustice, or properly grateful for goodness requires formation and practice. Character is not simply what we know, it is what we have trained ourselves to love. This raises an important question. What are we teaching our hearts to desire? There is a hierarchy of desires. Some things are more worthy of our devotion than others. A sublime work of art, an act of sacrificial love, or a life devoted to service offers a deeper fulfillment than the fleeting satisfaction of consumption. We become what we love. The educated life, Brooks suggests, is ultimately a journey toward higher and higher forms of love. True leadership reflects this principle. Leadership is not merely managing people or achieving goals. It is lifting a person's vision toward higher possibilities, raising performance toward higher standards, and helping individuals become more than they believed possible. Purpose, faith, and the search for meaning. Human beings are driven by a profound need to understand why they are here. Brooks argues that purpose is one of the most powerful forces in life. When people understand the meaning of their lives, even difficult circumstances lose their power to destroy inner peace. This leads naturally into the question of faith. In discussing religious commitment, Brooks presents religious stories not merely as historical accounts or moral lessons, but as descriptions of recurring patterns embedded with human existence. These stories reveal the shape of reality itself. They are the dramas of humanity that humanity continues to reenact generation after generation. The story of Jesus, in particular, stands in sharp contrasts to the world's obsession with accomplishment and status. It is not a story about earning worth through achievement. It is a story of grace. According to the Christian understanding, salvation is not earned through works. It is given freely. Grace precedes achievement. Jesus becomes the model of self-giving love, showing what it means to pour oneself out for others rather than endlessly striving for personal advancement. The many phases of pride. One of Brooks' most penetrating insights is his exploration of pride. Pride is often understood narrowly, but it appears in many forms. At its core, pride is the ego's attempt to establish security through its own efforts. There is the pride of power, which believes enough influence or control will finally make us safe. There is intellectual pride, which attempts to explain away all mystery through a single ideology or system of thought. Every fanaticism, Brooks suggests, is ultimately an attempt to cover existential insecurity with certainty. There is moral pride, which judges ourselves by generous standards while judging others by demanding ones. It seeks validation through superiority. There is even religious pride, where people mistake faithfulness to religious rules for spiritual maturity and begin to think highly of themselves because of their compliance. Yet authentic faith moves in the opposite direction. When we attach ourselves to a reality greater than our comprehension, life becomes less shocking and more wondrous. Mystery no longer threatens us, instead it invades Eve. Faith does not eliminate agency. Many people assume faith requires surrendering personal agency. Brooks challenges this misunderstanding. Faith and grace do not destroy human agency, they transform it. The humans will naturally bend towards self-concern. Even acts of humility can become opportunities for self-congratulation. The ego is endlessly resourceful in finding ways to admire itself. Yet the goal is not to eliminate the will. The goal is to train it. Spiritual growth involves learning to align ourselves with the deeper reality, gradually moving with the grain of divine love rather than against it. The result is not passivity but empowerment. Brooks describes commitment as a series of promises we make to the world. Marriage, vocation, friendship, faith, and community all require promises that bind us beyond momentary feelings. Religion, in this view, begins with an even greater promise. It is the possibility that an infinitely loving God has already made a commitment to us. We become the recipients of a love that seeks to redeem, restore, and bring us home. That is why faith remains a source of hope, building communities that matter. Brooks then shifts from personal faith to collective life. A healthy community is not merely a collection of individuals sharing space. It is a network of deep relationships, trust, mutual commitment, affection, and shared belonging. Such communities are rarely efficient. Genuine care requires friction. It requires time, inconvenience, vulnerability, and repeated presence. Strong communities do not emerge accidentally. They require intentional methods of gathering people together and creating opportunities for intimacy. Eventually, there must be what Brooks calls combustion, the moment when one life genuinely encounters another. This happens when people tell the truth about themselves. It happens through stories. It happens through vulnerability. It happens when people show up fully and call things by their proper names. One of the most transformative experiences in human life is receiving unconditional love. When someone continues showing up despite rejection, something changes within us. Equally transformative is learning to continue loving when we ourselves are rejected. These experiences shape identity. The power of shared stories. Communities thrive when they tell a shared we story. They ask collective questions. Where are we now? What challenges stand before us? What can we build together? Brooks emphasizes systems thinking as an essential component of community renewal. Most problems are interconnected. Attempting to solve a single issue in isolation often creates unintended consequences elsewhere. Communities function best when they understand the complexity of their systems and engage in ongoing feedback, learning, and adaptation. He also highlights the importance of what he calls thick institutions. These institutions shape identity rather than merely providing services. Their members gather regularly. They share rituals, responsibilities, stories, and moral purposes. They remember their origins. They celebrate those who carried the community through difficult moments. They cultivate belonging and shared mission. At their best, thick institutions remind people that they are part of something larger than themselves. Brooks often offers a memorable observation. The secret of life is to have a task to which you devote yourself completely, something you bring your whole being to, every day for the rest of your life. And it should be something you cannot possibly accomplish alone. The Relationalist Manifesto. In his concluding reflections, Brooks contrasts relational living with what he calls hyper-individualism. When people pursue self-expression and personal fulfillment as ultimate goals, many eventually discover that these pursuits do not satisfy the deepest human longings. The resulting vacuum often drives people toward tribalism. Tribalism offers belonging, but it is built on opposition. It divides the world into allies and enemies. It thrives on suspicion and danger. Relational living offers a different path. It is rooted in affection rather than hostility, commitment rather than self-interest, and service rather than status. Brooks argues that the best adult life is built around enduring commitments to a vocation, a family, a philosophy or faith, and a community. Paradoxically, surrendering ourselves to something greater does not weaken us, it strengthens us. Most people, if they are fortunate, eventually arrive at a moment of clarity. Looking back over their lives, they recognize the experiences in which they felt most alive, most fully themselves, and most connected to what truly matters. At that moment, the ego begins to loosen its grip. Freedom emerges, energy returns, purpose becomes clear, and joy appears. Not the fleeting happiness of self-gratification, but the deeper joy found on the far side of sacrificial service. According to Brooks, joy emerges when relationships are tender, commitments are strong, communication is honest, wounds have been absorbed, forgiveness has been extended, and love has been allowed to take root. In the end, the second mountain is a reminder that the richest life is not built by accumulation more for ourselves. It is built by giving ourselves away. And in that surrender, we discover not loss, but fullness. This is your moment. Take command and show us the path. Thank you for tuning in today. Next, please Head over to emberhart.com and follow us on TikTok at emberhartco. Keep reading, keep growing, and stay strong. Until next time.